What's up, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports, and you're watching the Lucas Ross Sports channel, and it's time for the AP Top 25 after week number 6 and heading into week number 7 of the 2022 college football season. Last weekend, a lot of big changes into the top 25, and now this weekend, we have a lot of changes to the top 25. Basically, some teams that we did not see coming into the top 25 this season, and also some teams that we don't really study a lot. So let's get right into it here with the AP Top 25 after week number 6 and heading into week number 7. And we start from 21 through 25, and James Madison is ranked number 25. They are the new number 25 team on this top 25 countdown. They are 5-0. This is a team that we don't really study on our videos a lot, but I'm really impressed of what the AP poll has done here with James Madison. You know, they're a small school. They're a really talented school, though, and I think this team really has, improved a lot. I don't really study them that much, so that's why I don't really have anything to talk about James Madison, but congratulations to James Madison University of making the top 25 poll. Illinois at number 24, coming off that, tough win against Iowa. I mean, that game was not even, an offensive battle or anything like that. It was a defensive game. I mean, both offenses really struggled in the game, but Illinois still came out on top. They're 5-1, and they made a pretty big surprise so far in the first half of the season. And I think I'm really impressed with what the Fighting Illinois have done so far, and they're ranked number 24. Ranked for the first time this season, so that's a big accomplishment. Texas back in the top 25 after a 49-0 shutout win over Oklahoma and Dallas. That game did not even prove to be even that close. I mean, I thought that game would be a lot closer than the experts say it will be, but Texas blew Oklahoma out, and Oklahoma now is pretty much terrible. I mean, they were calling this a playoff team in the beginning of the year, and now Oklahoma has fallen apart. Texas, though, I think with that win, they deserve to be ranked in the top 25 after that win over Oklahoma. Kentucky at number 22, moving down to, number 22. This is a tough spot for Kentucky. I mean, they're ranked number 22 now, and, after that loss to South Carolina, Kentucky is not really good without Will Levis. I mean, if you saw my takeaways video from yesterday on the Facebook page, I mean, Kentucky's sitting there at 4-2. It's not a bad record, but the record doesn't really matter. What matters is the playing time of Kentucky. I mean, their backup quarterback came in there with a lot of confidence. I mean, I thought he played pretty well, but I thought Kentucky would, go with the running game just a little bit to get this guy comfortable. And Kentucky now is kind of in trouble. They played Mississippi State this weekend, which is off to a really good start this year. People did not expect Kentucky to drop 2 games in a row, though, especially to one at home against South Carolina. Yes, that is disappointing. If you're a Kentucky fan, I understand that, but Kentucky now is sitting at number 22. 21 is Cincinnati. Cincinnati at 5-1. They could possibly still make a jump in the American Conference. I mean, Cincinnati, though, has gotten better ever since that loss to Arkansas. Yes, their one loss comes to Arkansas early in the season. If they would have won that game, Cincinnati probably would be ranked in the top 15 by now, but I think they're improving a lot this year, and I could see them improving in the next few weeks. Let's go to the next rankings here, 16 through 20, and a lot of changes to this one. Utah at number 20. Utah lost to UCLA this past Saturday. What a game that was. I mean, that was a shootout-type game there. Utah, though, couldn't really play good offense in this game. They're sitting now at 4-2. Their playoff hopes are pretty much over, and if you watch my preseason predictions, I had Utah going into the college football playoff, but they didn't happen. So Utah is now out of the, college football playoff picture, but they are still in that Pac-12 conversation. I mean, they could still wind up winning the Pac-12, maybe potentially meeting Oregon, maybe potentially meeting USC and UCLA. UCLA, Oregon, USC, and Utah are pretty much at the top of the Pac-12 right now. I mean, UCLA sitting up there in first right now. You got USC also sitting in first, so I mean, you got a tie for first there. Kansas at number 19. Heartbreaker loss to TCU this past Saturday. What a game that was. That game proved to be not even disappointing at all. Wasn't a defensive battle. It was a shootout-type game. Kansas, though, came out losing that game. But they still are ranked number 19. I'm really impressed with what Kansas has done this season. This is a decent team. I'm not saying they're a good team. I'm saying they're a decent team. Not saying that I really won't give my hopes up on them, but they're in that Big 12 championship conversation. But right now at the top of the Big 12 is Oklahoma State and TCU, and that game is happening this weekend. That's going to be a big one there, and Kansas might be back in that conversation. You never know. So Syracuse at number 18, they had a bye week this past week. Not really much to talk about Syracuse other than they're 5-0. And remember, the records don't really matter in this type of top 25. It's just simply how the teams are playing. And ever since, we've been knowing about more of these teams. Syracuse, though, they're ranked number 18. Not much to talk about them. Kansas State at number 17, surviving a close game, this past Saturday. So, I mean, Kansas State is still ranked here. They're 5-1, but they survived in that game against Iowa State. They won that game 10-9. It wasn't, the best game that Kansas State has played all year, but they just had to come, from behind and defeat Iowa State. And that game proved to be a lot closer than the experts say. But Kansas State, I like what they're doing. They're 5-1. They've surprised me a lot this year. Mississippi State at number 16. Just talked about them. They play Kentucky this weekend. What a game that will be. And hopefully it's a shootout type game. We've seen Mississippi State. Will Rogers at quarterback. He's looked pretty good so far this year. And, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, perhaps right now. Maybe Hendon Hooker is in that conversation as well. In Mississippi State, though, they are 5-1. They've really surprised me a lot this year. I was really high on this team, though, coming into this season. Wasn't really expecting them to start out 5-1, though. And remember, their only loss right now is to LSU on the road. I mean, if they would have won that game, they probably would have been undefeated and perhaps in the top 15. Mississippi State coming off some couple big wins, of course, against against Texas A&M. They beat them, and then of course Arkansas. So they blew both of those teams out. So Mississippi State, I like what they're doing. Let's go to the next rankings, 11 through 15. NC State at number 15. They're sitting at 5-1 after that loss to Clemson this past Saturday, but they redeemed themselves. NC State now at number 15. They beat Florida State this past Saturday, so this team right now is looking pretty good. They're starting to win ways. They could still make the ACC championship if Clemson were to lose a game. And remember, Clemson is probably the team now to beat in the Atlantic Division, and Syracuse is probably the team to beat in the Coastal Division. Or actually, Syracuse is in the Atlantic, so I'm really, messed up there. Wake Forest, though, talking about them just now, they're pretty much at the top of the ACC Atlantic as well. NC State and Wake Forest, they both have lost to Clemson this year. They're in a tie for second place right now, and they're pretty much trying to battle Clemson for that top spot. But Clemson right now, they are clearly number one on that list. TCU at number 13, just talked about them as well. They're 5-0, pretty much at the top of the Big 12. Tied with Oklahoma State, and they play them this weekend. What a matchup that will be. TCU, they're coming off a big win against Kansas this past Saturday, and of course coming off that big-time win against Oklahoma. This TCU team has shined this season. I was really high on this team coming into 2022 as well, and I knew they would be really good because of the amount of production they had. This offense is really good, the defense is really good, and they're proven every single game. Oregon at number 12. Oregon coming off a big-time win as well, 5-1 on the year. And this Oregon team, ever since that loss to Georgia, this team has gotten better ever since the season has begun. Bo Nix is getting better at quarterback. We've seen him at times, struggle, a little bit in the first few minutes, but now he's picked it up. Oregon sitting right there in that conversation in the Pac-12. Maybe they're second behind USC. I mean, there's probably pretty much a, first-place tie between UCLA and USC. But anybody can win this Pac-12 division. Anybody can win this Pac-12 conference. Oregon, though, don't really sleep on them. They could potentially still make the college football playoff as well. UCLA, just talked about them. Coming off that big-time win against Utah at home. They're coming off back-to-back top 25 wins against Washington at home and also against Utah at home. So, I mean, UCLA, they're 6-0. What a surprise they've been in the first half of the season. I did not expect them to start out, 6-0 to begin the year. I mean, basically the schedule has really set up nicely for them. And remember, they had the easiest schedule coming into this season. Maybe that's why they're undefeated, and the schedule really sets up nicely for them to really pay that off. Let's go to the next rankings. We go through 6 through 10 now. Penn State at number 10. They've been a big surprise this year. Took a bye week this weekend. They play Michigan this weekend. That is going to be a big-time matchup there, and that game is on the road. Going to be a big-time matchup there. Penn State will be a tough one, but they are sitting there at 5-0. They've been a big surprise as well this year. I wasn't really high on this Penn State team, but Penn State, they've really proven me wrong, and I'm really impressed with what they've done. Not much to talk about Penn State. Ole Miss at number 9. Ole Miss coming off that big win against Vanderbilt this past weekend, and then they beat Kentucky as well, so they're coming off a big-time winning streak, and they are 6-0. So, I mean, Ole Miss sitting there at 6-0, probably tied for first place with Alabama. How about it? If Alabama loses to Tennessee this weekend, Ole Miss potentially could win the Western Division. I mean, Ole Miss could wind up going undefeated, but they still have to play Alabama. The good news is you get that game at home, but that doesn't really matter. They had to still play their other opponents pretty tough. But Ole Miss sitting there at 6-0. Oklahoma State, they're pretty much the top team in the Big 12 right now. They're sitting at 5-0, coming off a big win this past weekend. Oklahoma State, I think, with TCU and Oklahoma State, both of these teams are pretty even. It's going to be a big-time matchup in the Big 12. They're both sitting there at 5-0. I think this decides who is the top team in the Big 12 conference, but don't really sleep on any other teams in the Big 12, including Texas. Texas could still win the Big 12 conference, and also Kansas is another team you don't want to sleep on, and of course they lost this past weekend, but I'm not giving my hopes up on this Kansas team, and also Kansas State. Don't really, sleep on them. USC at number 7. This USC team is pretty much at the top of the the Pac-12. I mean, they're really tied with UCLA right now. I mean, both of these teams are pretty even. USC, though, I think their offense is just much better than UCLA's, but they're sitting there undefeated at 6-0. They're coming off a big-time win this past weekend. Against Washington State. That was a big win there. They scored 30 points, and the offense has kind of slowed down for USC. But I think this team is still, a college football playoff contender, and also maybe the winners of the Pac-12 this season. Tennessee at number 6, coming off that big-time win against LSU on the road. Tennessee dominated that game. They recovered that kickoff, on the fumble, and Tennessee just took the game, to a blowout there. And we knew Tennessee going into that game, they would have a lot of confidence. I didn't really expect them to, go on the road and blow LSU out, though. But Tennessee, though, they're looking pretty good. Big-time matchup with Alabama this weekend. It's a top 10 matchup. Looking forward to that one, the third Saturday in October. Looking forward to that one, Tennessee versus Alabama. Tennessee trying to snap that losing streak. Can they do it this year? We'll find out this Saturday. And now let's go to the top 5. Pretty much a change here in the top 5 this weekend. Michigan at number 5, Clemson at number 4, Alabama at number 3, Ohio State at number 2. And Georgia's back at number 1 after, a couple weeks of, tough games. They're back at number 1. Let's talk about Michigan first. Took care of business against Indiana, but they moved down a spot. They were ranked number 4 for a while, and then they moved down a spot. Michigan, though, they played Penn State, so a chance to maybe move up in the rankings once again. But if they lose that game at home, Michigan pretty much out of the top 10. Maybe, but Michigan, though, I like what they're doing. Clemson at number 4, same thing. They took care of business against Boston College on the road. Clemson, like I said, they were going to get better on offense at the, end of the year, and this is what they're doing. Clemson is getting better. Their offense is getting better. DJ Ogilvy has gotten better at the, end of the year. And I think Clemson is a playoff contender after this, win over Boston College and over NC State, over those couple wins. They are a playoff contender. They are moving in the right direction after, a tough season last year. And I think Clemson will, get better as the season goes on. Alabama at number 3, they moved down 2 spots after that 4-point win over Texas A&M. I was really expecting Alabama to, go in there with a lot of confidence and, win in a blowout, but like I said, Alabama, though, they came away with the win only by 4. Texas A&M played pretty hard in this game. Of course, Alabama was without Bryce Young in that game, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think Alabama is not a top 5 team, without Bryce Young. But if they have him back this weekend, that will be huge because they play Tennessee on the road this weekend. That is going to be a big-time game on CBS. The third Saturday in October is going to be a big one this year. It's a top 10 showdown. Ohio State at number 2, just talked about them. Ohio State, of course, coming off that big-time win against Michigan State on the road. And Michigan State has been terrible this year. Ohio State pretty much at the top of the, Big Ten East. I mean, Michigan and Ohio State are at the top right now. Penn State as well. I mean, nobody else in the Big Ten East is really capable of, surprising any more. I mean, Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State are at the top of their game. And like I said, Ohio State has the most dangerous offense in the country. I think this is a team that, people are, not really respecting much on the offensive side of the ball. Ohio State, though, I'm calling this one, still one of the most dangerous offenses in the country, and they have proven that this season. Georgia at number 1, just talked about them. Big time win over Auburn. They played a lot better in that game, and I think I could see why they put Georgia at number 1, just because of, Ohio State being behind Georgia in the top 5 and Ohio State at number 2. But it makes sense. Georgia with a big time win over Auburn. And think about Georgia and Tennessee. They are coming off some blowout wins over their opponents against Western teams in the SEC West. Georgia, though, they improved this weekend after a couple weekends of, tough games with Kent State and then Missouri. But they proved to be, that number 1 team on that list. But that concludes the top 25 video. My thoughts on it, I really agree with all these rankings. I agree Alabama moved down to number 3 after that performance over Texas A&M. But we got a lot of big games this weekend. We got a lot of big games coming your way here. And, of course, stay tuned here for more videos on this channel. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.